Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms.
When my daughter was a newborn, we brought her home that first day, laid her in the bassinet next to me, and then she started to cry. And I looked at this little girl and I said, "You know what? You're brand new. You don't even know anybody yet. Come on in here with me." And I slept with my baby for a long time. And like a lot of newborns, she also lost a lot of weight that first week. And so when I brought her back, the doctor said, because she was also a little jaundiced, said, you need to make sure that she's eating enough. So I kept her in the bed with me. And I used to have to wake her up sometimes. I even had a song. I won't bore you with that song, but I even made up a song so I could wake up and so I could feed her. And we co-slept a long time. And my doctor even said, "Don't come back to me in a year and say, 'Dr. Bill, I can't get the baby out the bed.'" Well, I didn't come back to her in a year. But if I had, I would have come back to her for probably about 11 years. We co-slept a long time. But the thing is here, and I want to talk to my sisters about this, because the more I think about it, the more I wonder if we are subscribing to a westernized version of you have to get your baby to sleep on its own. Because there's all these things that talk about sleep training and self-soothing. And I'm sorry, I just recently saw something where a psychologist said babies don't have the capacity or the neurons yet to self-soothe. So when they cry it out and cry themselves to sleep, they've kind of given up. And I just didn't want my baby to feel like nobody was there for her. And my baby now is 22 years old, and I dare say I probably still would not let her cry herself to sleep without me going in there and making sure that she's okay. But she does not sleep with me anymore. So, yeah, I finally got her out of the bed before she got married. So, so I don't know. And the American Pediatric Association is always talking about how dangerous it is to co-sleep. I always knew where my baby was. I never rolled over on her. And we slept very well. And when she could wake up, when at the time she was nursing, and she nursed for about 20 months, when she could wake up, she gained enough weight. She was healthy. She never felt abandoned. I don't know. She's a great kid now, so if I did something wrong, I don't see it. What do you guys think?
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I would say, because what my husband was kind of old school, and he would always tell this story about how he had an aunt that rolled over on one of her babies and almost suffocated them or something, because he was nervous when I would put Zakia in the bed with us. But for me, it just made sense, because number one, I was nursing, and number two, I wasn't getting up in the middle of the night every night, all night. I'm not doing that. Hey, here it is. When you're hungry, hey, go ahead, go for it. I mean, plus I didn't want to have her crying. And then, I kind of felt the way you felt. Here's this little person, and they're all by themselves. They need comfort. So it's a natural instinct to sleep with your baby. And so I think it's kind of a Western concept: snatch the child away from the mother and put them way away someplace. And sometimes people have a whole separate room for a child, which no, I don't see that. But I think we have to question a lot of things that we adopted that people would make fun of other cultures, even the whole thing with wrapping your baby up around you. Because I had one of those snugglies, you know, and I carried the kid with me strapped to my body everywhere. And, you know, people would say little things like, oh, that's so primitive or whatever. But you know what? Hey, she's not crying. She's calm. And if I need to feed her, there she is, you know. So sleeping, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think she cried less because she wasn't way across the room in a crib. That's my thought.
You know, as a new mom, I read, excuse me, I've read a lot. I read a lot of magazines, parenting magazines, baby books. I went to the library, had stacks of a lot of reading material with all kinds of opinions, and then I still formed my own. Uh, Lavinia was the first one. She was fed on demand. She was in the bed with us until, you know, she was at least a year, you know, before she was mostly in her own crib. Because I will say this, when those kids get bigger, they are complete bed hogs. You're trying to sleep, and this child is laying all diagonally. And next thing you know, you're like being further and further on the edge of the bed while they are almost kicking you out. So my grandson is the same way. When we would watch him, you know, and he's 2, he's in the bed with us, and you wake up and you're almost on the floor, and he has the whole double bed to himself. So, and that's just the funny part. But that whole thing of letting the baby cry, that's no good. And I will say this about feeding your baby in the middle of the night. I did it until my kids were over a year old. And then this book called Healthy Sleep Habits, Happy Child by Dr. Mark Westbluth. That book saved my life. It wasn't about twins, because the second time around I had twins and I had to put them on a schedule, because then, you know, John would eat 1 hour and then Lorelai's ready the next hour. And after like 6 hours of that, I never got any sleep. So I had to put them on a schedule where I could feed them both at the same time. And these kids all were almost 2 before I weaned them. But that time of being in the bed saves you having to get up and go and get them out of their bed, because you read enough and it tells you when a baby cry, by the time a baby is crying, they're already starving.
Yeah.
It's a scary concept to understand and read, but I realized, you know, first whimper, I'm there. I'm not letting my child cry. And I know that when I was in China, and Lavinia had this ministry where she would go to a place called the Helping Hands, where they had a number of children that had been abandoned. Our job was just to come and hold the babies, because they didn't have anybody. They said that whole nurturing thing actually helped them to develop emotionally, to have a sense of security. And they just had round the clock people that came and just held them until they were adopted. A lot of these kids had birth defects, and people that wanted to adopt them would pay for their operations. And it was just an opportunity to see how nurturing that is, to have an adult warm body next to you, providing as much security as is possible, because they've left the womb. They have left the most secure place they've ever known. And some of the things I read talked about not to blame parents where these incidents happened, but there were occasions where they would say the sleeping death syndrome was the cause, because a baby was left alone and maybe felt that they don't really know the answers to a lot of those things. And so you don't want to put guilt on a parent whose child passed away that way.
Syndrome,
But I feel that whole nurturing aspect, it goes by really fast, and you need to do everything you can to be that kind of parent that is willing to give up a little bit of sleep because you're not going to get any anyway.
Yes.
So it's good to have your child right by you.
Yeah.
And the
Well,
thing is, like I remember when I took her to see the doctor one time, and she says, "Do you carry this baby a lot?" And I said, "Yeah." Why? Because I thought she was gonna say I was doing something wrong. She says, "Because her head is perfectly round."
Oh,
Because
that's interesting.
because I didn't let
You didn't lay her in a crib all the
it's
time.
later.
time to
Yeah.
have my baby. You know what? You all know I was already 42 when I had my baby. I had waited a
Oh, yeah.
long time to have this little girl. And if she cried, I
Yeah.
was right there. I remember once I got up and I had to like let the dog in and wipe the dog down because it was wet, and I had to eat because I was starving. And she cried for maybe 5 minutes. And
Oh.
and you know what? I cried for an
Felt
hour
bad.
after that.
Yeah.
I was
A little
devastated.
piteous
You,
cry.
because I could, but I was
Did
like,
you really feel bad when you can't comfort them? Something
because
happens,
I
they
couldn't
cry.
get
It's
there
so
fast enough,
sad.
but I was absolutely starving, and
Yeah.
maybe it was 7 minutes that she cried, but I cried for an hour after that because I felt so incompetent. That was like my first week when I was by myself.
Yeah, and I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that's the hardest thing. And I don't know how single mothers do it because
I
you have to
don't
do
know
all these
either.
things and you can't comfort your baby because you're trying to do all these things. And and it's just so easy to make somebody feel guilty if they're not able to juggle a million things and take care of a baby. It's
But
so
you
Yeah.
know
Hey,
what?
let the
but
house go. You can clean it later.
yeah,
Or
some
pay
you just
somebody
gotta
else
let
to
it
do it
go.
if you can.
Yeah.
But having your child sleep with you, I think that's one of the things that you can do that at least brings them some comfort at night because you don't want them crying at night. Now, Viata Robinson from
I
Florida
see
says,
that. Yeah.
yes, having kids sleeping with you can seriously disrupt the rest of a sensitive adult. Now, that's the thing. How do you deal with it if you and your husband, you're both in the bed and maybe they don't think the child should be there and you don't want to put the child away because you feel like, well, yeah, she needs to be with us.
Well,
What do
no,
you do? Put
this
them on the other side or kick them out? I
no.
mean, what do you do?
Yeah, well, this is the thing that used to happen to me. I get that if you're a sensitive adult, but when I went back to work when Sarah was 6 months old, and so I worked nights. He worked days. I worked nights. So I would come home, and she would not be in the bed. She would be in her crib, and I would wake up. And so I would get in the bed, and she would wake up around 6 months. They're still waking and that kind of stuff. They're not sleeping through the night. She'd wake up and she'd cry. He would get up, put her in the bed with me because he needed his sleep. And then he would go into the other room because we had another bedroom, and he would go in there and sleep. So it always ended up in the bed together. And on the nights that I was home, she just ended up there. And it was just like eventually she was gonna wake up and come in with us, and we did all kinds of stuff by the time she was 4, and we tried to bribe her and everything else. But eventually, she would come in, and eventually she got old enough to where she did not want to constantly come into the bed. And I was feeling bad about her being like 10, 11 years old until I had friends that says, you know what, I got my kids are 13 and 15 and they still come to bed with me. So at that point I said, you know what, you're okay. You are not scarring her for life. She's not going to grow up and be a pervert or anything like that. They needed the comfort, and when she didn't need it anymore, she's fine. You can't get her to come to bed with you now. Forget about it. It's not going to happen. Not that I need a
Well, if
22
there's
year
a
old.
bad dream, the bed is always open.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
that's true. I mean, because they do have nightmares when they're young, and
Yes.
or thunderstorms, things like that.
Or
I'm
night
not a
terrors.
fan of having the
Because
room
Sarah
be
used to get night.
completely dark either. I think
Yes.
Yeah.
have the door open with light that's streaming in because they tell you that having a night light is not good for their eyes.
For the
I've read
eyes,
some
yeah.
about that too. But
Yeah,
as a
something.
grandparent, I pass on some of these same things that I have read about that I find to still be true.
Yeah. Well, I still can't sleep with the closet door open because of monsters in the closet. So I have to get up, close the door.
Girl, those things are under the bed.
Let's just check under the bed. Yeah. So
no, this is what I used to do. I used to spray when I did get Sarah to sleep in her own room and she would talk about monsters. I used to spray my perfume. I told her that monsters were scared of Mama's perfume. And, so I just gave her, yeah, and it worked, until in the middle of the night when she came in there and I would just move over,
So when she's married and she's spraying perfume under the bed, you had some explaining to do.
Nope, not, you know what? I ain't got nothing. She doesn't even remember that stuff now. So if she starts doing it, there'll be some trigger or something, and I'm not saying a word.
I don't know. It's just a family tradition. I don't know where it came from.
Yes, exactly. but that's the thing is that and I get where sometimes it can disrupt the whole house. And I used to watch Super Nanny where she was talk on and on about this, but I just think that this is a cultural thing for some of us that we can't, we have to do what we feel is best for us, not and everybody doesn't feel like that. I'm not saying it's the Black culture to always have your kids in the bed or the white culture not to, because I've known white parents who say, I don't care if we have to have a family bed. But I think that we have to stop listening to experts because
you don't have any children.
Expert on your kid more than you are.
Right. Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. You have to do what makes sense. And if your child is at peace and comfortable, then that's the thing that makes sense. So now, Barbara, you had the first grandchild, and so yours was kind of, the firstborn is always the test child. You do all the
poor thing.
Yeah. If they survive, then the next ones will be okay. So when it came to having to put her in a crib, her being your first child, how did you feel about that when you did have to put her away separate, even in her own room? Was that a hard thing to separate?
It was not. Now I'm trying to think back because my oldest is 35 now, so we're digging way back.
And just so you all know, our mother just reported that she just called. She just got through talking to Lavinia from China right now.
Oh, nice. Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
So yes, she just checked in. We just got to talk about checking in. So she just checked in with from China.
Yeah. So in terms of, she was with us a long time in the same bedroom. Her crib was like a step away from mine. Mm-hmm. We had very small quarters. And even when she got her own bedroom, it was right next door to our main bedroom. So she was never really far away.
Right.
And like I said in a previous episode where we were sharing about breastfeeding, I had complications in my pregnancy and was not able to breastfeed for about 6 weeks.
Wow.
And I had made a determination that I was going to breastfeed my baby, and I got a pump and was able to pump for those 6 weeks because I was on medication. So she had to be on a bottle. But as soon as that medication was over and I was all healed, I breastfed until she was almost 2 years old.
Yeah.
So,
I nursed until Sarah was 20 months. I would have let her go a little longer, but we were trying to have another one. So, I was told that if we wanted to have another one, we had to wean her. But and it took about it took less than a week, But I still feel guilty about that, but she's fine. But that was the thing because they wanted that closeness. But she was always close to us too. Now her bedroom, it was like right off of ours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so she could wake up and she could lean over and she could see us. And that's the thing is when she got to the point where she could stand up in her crib and lean over and go, hi. And that meant, okay, it was time to
Oh,
get up and
cute.
go and get her. Yeah, she was very cute. And that's when her father would come and get her and then put her in bed with me and then go into the other room. So
Yeah, well, Zakia, she started out in the same room with us. Her crib was right next to our bed. But half the time, like if she cried at night, I'd get up and get her and put her in the bed. I never put her back, because I'm like, okay, why?
Yeah.
To get her again. I used to get really angry when my husband, he would be sleeping all soundly and everything, and she's crying, and that little sound. I mean, and it sounds like the loudest thing in the world. And I'm thinking, this man is faking like he can't hear this baby cry. I used to really get agitated because I thought for sure, he's faking because he don't want to get up and get her. But then I read years and years later that a mother's ear is actually tuned to the pitch of a child and a father's ear is not. So they really
and you have a physiological response.
Yeah.
And because Sean
your
would be
milk
just like,
starts everything,
because I remember one time he asked, well, when can we let her cry? I says, when she's 18 and out of the house.
Right, that's it. And even then I might have to go get her.
But let me tell you something. Let me tell you something else. I don't care what you read. When I was working at the Globe and I would talk to those older guys because I was there and I was pregnant, and so they were sharing all the stuff. Mm-hmm. They would say, "Oh yeah, I heard the baby cry." I would just pretend like I was asleep so I didn't have to get up.
So there was some faking.
So there was some faking there. Yeah, they hear it just fine. They just don't want to get up.
Later, your turn to get the baby.
Yeah, no.
That's one thing though. If you're doing formula, then anybody can get up. But if you're breastfeeding, only you.
Unless
it was Eric's turn to get the baby, he would get up, get the baby or get the babies and bring them to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember you saying he was grouchier with the twins.
He was. Oh my goodness. Because you really get a lot less sleep. That tale about twice as hard, that's not true. It is 4 times as hard.
Yeah.
I can imagine. I can definitely imagine. Because Barbara used to amaze me, juggling 2 babies and trying to do the whole.
And we were part of one of those twin support groups that we would go and we'd ply them with all these questions. And I remember one of the first questions I asked was, so when did you get their baby books done? And they all would laugh, these people with twins and triplets and quadruples. Oh yeah, when they grew up, we gave them their baby books. Well, guess what? I have done the same thing. I got up to like 3 years old. And that was it.
Oh. Yeah, well, don't feel too bad because I only had 1 and I only got up to about, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3.
You know what? We didn't have a camera at that time, so I know I have different mementos, but I don't have a whole lot of photos. So Zakia has been asking me, well, where are my baby photos? How come you aren't taking any pictures? I said, well, ask your Aunt Barbara and your Aunt Cheryl. They took
yeah. You probably have lots of it. I know I always had some, like her first ice cream and stuff like that.
Yeah, so you'll have to give her those photos.
Yes.
Yeah, she's feeling like we didn't capture her youth.
Yes.
But I really think that we have to re-educate mothers who might still be hearing some of that old school thinking of, you have to let them cry, you have to let them exercise their lungs, it's good for them, they'll be spoiled. I find
spoiled babies are love babies. You cannot spoil a baby.
You can spoil me, you can spoil a baby. And what I find that people who are more secure emotionally are the ones who were nurtured as babies. They were breastfed. They were cuddled when they cried. They spent time. Their parents picked them up and held them.
Yeah.
The people who I have observed are most insecure emotionally are the ones who were weaned too early, whose parents put them away in a crib or a playpen, didn't pick them up, didn't hug them. Those are the people that spend a lifetime trying to find the comfort that they didn't get in infancy, and they look for it in a bottle or and whatever they put up their nose or whatever they smoke. I mean, they're looking for
bad relationships.
Yeah,
bad relationships. I mean,
oh my goodness, I didn't
there's something neurological about that.
Vinny was over a year old. We didn't even go out. We were so funny.
Oh, well, we got to go
You
out only
parents
because
always
you all helped me. I remember, you all helped me, you all
and you
came,
do need help.
and so that we
Yeah.
could go out to dinner once.
Yeah. I mean, you do have to have that. I think I
Support.
told you all that story about when me and Zakia and Sultan, we went out to dinner, and she was real young, like 18 months or 2 years, something like that, and she had this favorite doll. And Zakia was always very expressive. Her facial expressions just said everything. So I mean, she brought the doll with her, her favorite little friend, and we sat at the table at this restaurant, and the waitress said, "Oh, well, we can get you a one of those booster chairs for your daughter." And so, yeah, okay, give us the booster chair. So you had to put the big booster chair in the chair so they can sit up. And so Zakia goes, "We need one for my friend." And so Tom looks at her like, dolls don't eat. That's silly. And Zakia gave him this look like, you better play along. So he looked, she turned to the waitress and said, we need another booster chair.
Yes, exactly.
The waitress, she was good natured
We
about it.
don't mind.
She bought a booster chair, and we got ready to order. And so Tom said, I don't care what she said. I ain't ordering a plate for that doll. But I mean, at least she sat there at the table with us. But Zakia was always so expressive. Her face said so much. And she looked at him like, you better play along.
Yeah.
Get that chair from my friend.
Yes.
But I think that she was very calm, and she's still a calm spirited person. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I did sleep in the bed with her until she was college.
19, 20.
until she left the house. But until she went to college. But I carried her around in the snuggly. I did all the things, the so-called primitive stuff that people would make fun of, as if it's not civilized to carry your baby. But I ignore all that. I think it does make a difference in their emotional health.
And these things change, because when we were young, people used to say that formula was better than breast milk. And then they started changing a generation. And in our community is not as encouraged as it should be. But you know what? Folks that look like us, they were wet nurses in the back.
We were feeding other people's babies.
So they knew what was best for their children. And that's the same thing with caring. Now you have all these things with the baby Bjorns and all of these little holders, and how you can carry them in a sling or backpack or whatever. But before it was like, you put your baby away from you, but now we don't do that anymore. So a lot of the things that people are telling you is best for the baby are coming back to what they used to call primitive, because you see these very calm babies over in the motherland who have their babies strapped to them, and those babies are just fine. They're thriving. And
I will say this thing about the baby slings, to do your research on them, because some of them are not safe for certain ages. There's certain ones that baby is not old enough to actually be in different kinds of slings, and they aren't able to breathe. So it's good to know the brand, the type, and the age of the baby to be fitted for a particular type of sling.
Especially, if their head needs to be supported, because you wear them in the front when they're really small like that, but they have to be facing inward, so that they can, so they can be supportive. Now, when I went back to dance, I used to have a backpack, and I used to strap her to my back, and I would dance that way, because when I put her in the front, she would lean over because she would hear the sound, because I'm a tap dancer. So she would lean over and she would look for that. So I started putting her on my back, and somebody says, "Oh, her head's going to fall off," but she would fall asleep while I was dancing.
Oh, well, that sounds like fun.
So because the rocking motion.
Yeah, well, that's good. Well, we've got to go, and we certainly do appreciate all of you all who have listened in. And remember, if you have a child that is still in the crib and they cry, and you're breastfeeding, it's okay if you keep them in the bed with you. You won't roll over and crush them. Just
You know where
make
your baby
sure,
is.
yes, just make sure you don't just let them cry and cry and cry.
Yeah.
They're saying, I need comfort. Well, we got to go. We want you all to join us again next week here on Three Black Moms. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook, Three Black Moms. I'm Naima.
I'm Cheryl.
I'm Barbara. We are Three Black Moms.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hi, I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're Three Black Moms.